Hey, beautiful people. So I'm driving to Target to do a nice 2 to 10:30. And Saturday and Sunday, I really like them because there is a lot of people coming through the store and it's always fun. And also we get like random people that we don't typically get because we mostly have during the week. Yeah, there are some randoms, but we have all the people who comes every time and we kind of know. And it's nice to get a little bit of new people. Is always fun. But I wanted to talk about something because the big news until at least here in LA from yesterday is that Netflix look like it's gonna buy Warner Brothers for $80 billion. Like how much fucking money is that? $80 billion. Like it's unimaginable the amount of money that they put together. And why that is interesting is very interesting to me because we are gonna end up with having basically Disney and Netflix because Netflix is gonna acquire Warner Brothers and also HBO Plus, right? So you're literally gonna have two choices. Like they're gonna be owning everything, right? And why is interesting? It's interesting because I remember when Netflix first came out, and they were like, the new service, the new way to get entertainment for cheap, and they were, I mean, at least they were perceived as something against the establishment and something against what was like the monopoly of these cable companies that they were stealing money because I remember like when Netflix came, I canceled my cable because I was like, why the heck I need to spend $100 a week, $100 a month to get all these channels that I never really watch because it was all about, bundling stuff together and oh, you get this, but actually it would cost this much, but no, we give it to you for less, but then you never really fucking watch any of that shit, right? And so you could for like I think it was $6 when in the beginning. Like for $6, you could watch everything you wanted. And the the reason why I got Netflix, it was related to content because it was the time that Breaking Bad got on Netflix. So I was like, fuck it, I don't want to get AMC because back then AMC was one of the extra things. I was in New York and the cable plan, I want to say I had Time Warner or some shit like that. And AMC wasn't part of it. So to be able to watch Breaking Bad, I would have had to purchase like an add-on, right, to be able to watch the AMC shows. And I was like, fuck this shit. Look at Netflix, how more convenient and just they are because I'm able to watch this together with a lot of other things. Because in the beginning, when they were just licensing or getting things on their service, they had a ton of things and a ton of really good things, right? So it was like a no-brainer. And also, I feel like the other reason why most of the people jump onto Netflix was House of Cards. House of Cards that was, um, I want to say, almost revolutionary for the time because it was like so tight and intriguing and interesting, well written, and it was so well engineered, right, as a series and as a product. And I also heard some people saying, oh, actually, House of Cards was the result of data that they collected, and it was basically sort of created by a like an algorithm, like a result of all the things that they knew people were gonna be interested into. And it's funny because for how quote unquote woke Netflix eventually became, because it's kind of like the beacon of all that. current of thinking and of thought. I truly think that House of Cards um, was, and especially like the character of Frank Underwood, was like this sort of populist hero that I truly think that put in the zeitgeist the foundations also for the first election of Donald Trump. Like I think that Donald has a lot of similarities to me with Frank in being so um, all-encompassing as a figure, right? And so there is something intriguing there. But um, Netflix, when came out, was the anti-establishment, right? And now, flash forward to, I don't know, 10, 15 years after, we are in the situation where basically it's becoming like cable again, right? So you're gonna have these two monopolies that are gonna be able to charge whatever the heck they want, and they sort of own everything. And uh, and guess what? The result of that, of course, is that prices are gonna go up. And already Netflix like sort of backtrack or started extracting so much more by having, plans that have advertising, and kind of like the whole point of having Netflix was also no watching advertisements, right? And doing live events. Now, nothing wrong with live events and advertisement, but is they are basically changing the core of what they are now. Is this by design? Is that something that they knew since the beginning, or they kind of had to do as they were going along to keep growing? Who knows? But the point is that you're gonna go back to cable. We're like we are already back to cable. We are already back to having to um, pay somebody to that kind of have access to everything, and eventually it's gonna end up that these live shows that you get, you're gonna have to pay for to unlock and all this kind of shit, right? So what good did to us as a consumers? Very little, and in the process, they kind of demolished the um, filmmaking as an art form because filmmaking in the beginning, you had like I don't know when movies were actually movies, right? So in the which means by movies being actually movies, I mean shot on film with cameras, right? So what made film an art form and what is a film? A film was something shot on film and that didn't have computers and nothing to do with digital. It was about humans and it was about behavior, it was about emotions. While eventually, and of course, it's not a process that is all due to Netflix, but when we started introducing computers into the equation, right? Being that special effects in the beginning that were created with digitally with a computer. So we move from visual effects and special effects made practically to um, visual effects and special effects made with a computer. We started making it something else that is not filmmaking, and um, the next step in this evolution that is kind of like negating what filmmaking was in on itself were digital cameras. And digital cameras, I have to be honest with you, a good uh, memory of them because digital cameras are what allow me to get into the media business. Because when I moved to the United States and I moved to New York, it was the year that the red camera came out, the red one. And the red one was revolutionary because it allowed to use cinema lenses on something digital and it had a very good sensor, a very good latitude. And you could get results that were on par with things shot with a 35 millimeter Panavision, especially if you knew how to shoot and you knew how to light and you knew how to post the stuff, right? Because the main difference between 35 millimeter and digital is that 35 millimeter, depending on the stock that you pick, you already have a look, right? Then you can in the lab make changes to this look, but the amount of post that you need to do in terms of punching in a look is much, much reduced, right? So digital kind of implies that after you shoot, you're going to have to mess with this stuff to give it a certain look. And of course, you can add filtration on the camera, pick certain lenses. So it's a process that starts on set but ends up definitely in a post facility. So what happened is that having so much more people shooting because digital is not as expensive as film uh, open a whole market also in terms of post production, right? Because a lot of people and brands started shooting stuff that they wouldn't otherwise have been able to do so. So a lot of jobs open, and I was one of the people that jump on that. And I was doing music videos, I was doing commercials, both shooting and editing, right? But I definitely crystallized myself as an editor because there was so much work, and I kind of enjoyed it. I enjoyed the process of combining things together and cobbling them and giving them new life. And I enjoy the fact that depending on how you combine things, they can acquire completely different meanings, right? Because editing is really like magic, and by editing things firsthand, you really understand that pretty much nothing that you are watching you should take as face value at face value. Why? Because you can literally manipulate everything with timing and music and whatever succession of shots you pick, million of tricks, and you can completely alter the sense of something, right? So it's a very, very, very intriguing art form, and I don't know if you want to call it art form, but yes, it's an art form, anything. And so this process of making everything move from the physical realm to the digital realm got a lot of steam through streaming services. Why? Because streaming services were the first time that even minor and smaller thing that they wouldn't have got a theater run had the possibility of being seen and sometimes also of exploding because you had YouTube, right? So things could organically just explode on YouTube that start at the same time, but or similar time. But the having the mark of Netflix, right, had some sort of allure to it. Like since the beginning, um, saying, "Oh, I got something on Netflix," kind of implied that it was good because you couldn't just put anything, right? So when I started uh, my journey as a filmmaker, getting on Netflix was kind of like the objective of everyone. Why? Because it was much harder to sign with a studio or to end up in a movie theater while saying, "Oh, I make something independent with not a lot of money." And I make it end up on Netflix seemed like a very viable thing and attainable thing. Another thing that was really cool about Netflix is that it kind of revamped the whole idea of documentary. Documentaries are amazing. I love doing documentaries. I find them incredibly intriguing, and not because they are necessarily something that is real, right? Even that is a misconception. The documentaries are real. Like documentaries have a point of view. Like everything that is um, cobbled together and engineered to express an idea is, of course, not 360 degrees fully comprehensive of every idea. So is non is an alteration of reality. Like the only reality really that you experience is your own life. But even that, you have a point of view, right? So you look at the same thing, two different people have a two different life experience, and they're going to interpret them differently. So is a very interesting concept. But the cool things about the documentary on Netflix is that you could make very niche things, and these very niche things really gain a lot of steam at times. And a, a very interesting subgenre, if you want, is all those murder documentaries that, of course, they also have a lot of live through podcasts. So I feel like there is a um, definitely a relation between podcast and streaming. And why? Because both of them at the core have the idea that you can consume a content at whatever time you want. You don't have to sit there and wait for something to come up. You can consume it whenever you want. You can stop it whenever you want, and you can start again whenever you want. But another cool element of streaming was the binge watching, right? That we went from a model where you had to wait a week to watch something or a year or something of that nature to things being released all at once. So the it's very easy when you watch something one day and then kind of have to wait a week to forget certain details, or even worse, if you have to wait a whole year in between series. But you still kind of have to. But let's say that you discover something at season four and you start watching it, you can watch all these things very quickly in all together back to back, and you get a much better experience as a viewer because you notice where more details, where more shades, and you overall get a better experience. But you also, on the other hand, makes things more throwaway, right? You don't live with these characters and with these stories as long because you consume them quicker. But arguable what is better, definitely interesting. Um, so I'm not saying that everything is terrible, but for sure, streaming kind of took away another piece of what filmmaking was because there was a sacrality into waiting for stuff, and there was a sacrality into having to go in a physical building all together in the dark, shut up, don't be on your phone, and watch something, right? Because the amount of attention that you give to something when you're in a movie theater is incredibly different from the amount of attention that you give to something when you watch it on your phone. And saying, oh, watching a thing on my phone is all the same, is not. Is not because it's a completely different experience. It's the same that, yes, driving a Fiat of driving a Ferrari is both driving an Italian car, but they're entirely different experiences, right? And I say that as a proud Fiat owner. Like there is definitely a huge difference in how you experience and how your brain and body interpret what is happening. So it changed. It made movies not as special as they were, and they made movies and episodes interchangeable, right? So series became like 8 hour movies with breaks, right? So it definitely altered both. And that is not per se something negative, right? But it's just a fact that filmmaking became something different. And if you put into the mix the fact that now you also have platforms like Twitch, like where we are streaming now, and YouTube, where you can go live, or TikTok, um, it definitely took away the sacrality of images that movies once were. Why? Because it's much easier to create images now. So if before to create an image you needed somebody who, we talk about photography, needed to know how to shoot 35 millimeter film, which is not the easiest thing because to be able to shoot 35 millimeter film, you need to know lighting and you need to know um, ASA, ASA. You need to know what kind of film, what light sensitivity it has, and you kind of need to know how you wanted something and thinking through and plan for it and do your math to be able to get the image that you wanted, right? While digital photographers, they started developing this thing that they shoot 752 million images because it costs nothing to shoot one photo more on digital. You just need like enough memory cards. Um, and it kind of took away from the sacrality and the process and the thought that was put into things. And that also translates into films because having less less thinking and less decision to make beforehand definitely impacted the result. And I think it's undeniable that having so many things coming out, most of them are pretty much crap. So we got way more content because now it's called content, but most of it is BS. Like is either um, reiteration or rehashing or something. But we also got completely new genres that are incredibly interesting because there is something incredibly compelling into watching somebody talk. And we discovered that through podcasts, we discovered that through live stream, and a completely new way of living this media came out. And I love streamers. I love streaming. I love even people who make content. I find appealing to everything. But it's undeniable that the importance of filmmaking went fading because of this. And again, not a bad thing, but is a thing. Um, so going back to this merger that is happening, what is the core and the most interesting thing about watching movies, in my opinion, is living life through the lens of somebody else's life experience, right? So you have the possibility to learn from somebody else's mistake without having to actually experience them. I'll make an example. Let's say that you watch, I don't know, Goodfellas or whatever gangster movies, right? You see something very appealing and very intriguing and very exciting, and you kind of enjoy the life of these characters, but you also understand that crime doesn't pay, right? So if you live that way, you live like 10 really cool years, and then most likely you end up in jail or dead for the rest of your life. So, um, seeing all these different point of views and different life experiences is very enriching, and is it kind of goes back, in my opinion, also to the concept of what a parable is, so to the Bible, right? So Jesus taught through examples, right? There were stories that exemplified a concept and represented it in a way that is almost visual, even if through text, because we read it, right? But if you were there, you would have experienced it orally, like through a story being told to you, but is in relation to images. It's not giving you the raw concept behind you. It's giving you a story, and this story has a meaning, and this meaning has a teaching, right? And filmmaking, it was very similar to that because um, each film or each story kind of had a moral to it, had something that was being explained to you, a point of view that was being offered you. And by diminishing the amount of places where these stories come from, so by creating all these mergers and whatnot, we are kind of destroying that plurality of ideas that once was alive for a very brief time when for example, the internet came out. Why? Because if you put all these tech companies, each and every one of these tech companies have an agenda that they push, right? And this has came out multiple times. So certain things get put off the air, people get banned, certain things are set up so that they get more traction than others. So you're not having a real and organic experience based just on people's opinions or people's needs or people's desires or what people actually enjoy. You create this world that is sort of cobbled together of whatever objective all these groups have. And it's very obvious to me that um, each company kind of pushes their own agendas. And the least amount of companies you have, the least amount of point of views you're going to end up having. And so something that started in the beginning as a way to get more people the opportunity to actually express themselves is going to result in something where less people is going to have the opportunity to express themselves. Why? Because either you marry a certain point of view or you marry the worldview of that is being pushed by that specific entity, or you're not just gonna get space. You're not gonna get traction. You're not gonna get attention. You're not gonna get eyeballs, and it's kind of very detrimental. And I truly, at its core, see Netflix not as a studio. Like Netflix is a technology company, right? It became Netflix by offering a more convenient way to experience content. And if you go back to the source of it, there is that very famous story where they went and they met with Blockbuster executives to try to sell the company to Blockbuster, and basically they got laughed out of the room, right? And at that point in time, you had home video as people going out at the beginning of their Friday night or whatever, go to Blockbuster, buy some popcorn, some shit, and rent videos and watch these videos, right? You had video stores, and that was a way to experience filmmaking in your house, right? So you didn't necessarily have to go to um, a movie theater already. But you still had to think, kind of like make a decision, right? While now Netflix offer you the fact that you had at your fingertips the access to so many titles, and you could kind of pick on a whim. Like you didn't have necessarily to say, okay, I rented this video, so even if I don't like it halfway through, I have to watch it. Or yes, I can still stop it, but whatever the fuck I pay for it. So there is a again, something that takes away from the sacrality of each and every movie or series or whatever the heck you have, right? And and if you're a technology company, you definitely see things as content because you are especially a way for people to you're a way for to bridge, right? The creators and the filmmakers with the public, right? And you're something in between. Then eventually they started making their own things, right? And making their own things means that they had all this data about what people like, what people watch, what people was intrigued by, where people stop watching something, and they are able to basically engineer content like the same way that junk food company engineer food, right? They know that they hit your receptors a certain way with certain things. A human is going to respond a certain way. So there is absolutely a component of manipulation and catering to people's taste that most likely than not doesn't have the as a goal, the goal to teach you something. Is the goal to indoctrinate you and the goal to keep you watching, right? So something that before was created by people that had a inclination towards sharing a point of view and towards kind of filtering and expressing their experiences through a movie became something completely different, became something um, commercial and politically motivated. And I'm not saying that nobody ever made political movies, of course, but they came from a plurality of point of views, while everything became very standardized and very cookie cutter. And unfortunately, the word of PR and public relation became interchangeable with the word of media and the word of entertainment. And and it's not good. It's not good for us as a country. It's not good for the world in general. Why? Because you're gonna necessarily end up presenting a world that is not the world that people experience. You're kind of putting into being things with the objective of steering people's behavior and thoughts in a certain direction, right? So why podcasts and YouTubers and live streamers got so much into the discourse because it was a response to that, because people started getting tired of hearing always the same shit and getting preached at and getting like spoon fed things that didn't really connect with their everyday life. And like I said before, like if people actually went out and didn't live so separated and insulated, consuming only things that marry their point of view and only interacting with people that doesn't make them uncomfortable, we would have a society that is much less divided. Because if you actually are around people, you see that we have all way more in common than things that we don't have in common. Like we all have certain mechanism and certain emotion and things that make us happy or make us cry, and we are all, for how unique we are all similar, and it's kind of ridiculous that we are so polarized. And this polarization is a result of this, is a result of a um, centralization of ideas and taste, and I think the more we keep merging all these companies, the worse this situation is going to become. So we need to be very mindful of this, and hopefully there is going to be, because this deal needs to get approved by antitrust, but the antitrust lately hasn't been doing much, and I wonder even there how much people has been bought out, because the big problem in entertainment and in the world as of now is that we started putting money before everything, and money shouldn't be the main goal of a filmmaker or anyone, because you should go through life with the idea that you want to have a interesting and rich experience, but rich in human relations, not rich in money. Because the ultimate goal of life shouldn't be, oh, I want to have so much money that I can do whatever I want and don't listen to anyone. No, that's messed up. You should be able to be around people, give back to people, contribute to your community, and I feel like we lost a lot of that. We lost relying on other people, and we a lot of people live with the idea that an ideal life is doing what you want all the time, or being able to do what you want all the time without having to deal with other people. And uh, and that automatically brings us to a society that is not fair and is incredibly skewed, and where certain people is marginalized, and the especially the people who seems to be so adamant about equal opportunities and all this kind of stuff are the ones that in the end are the most intolerant. So it's very ridiculous and counterproductive how all this develops. And so now more than ever, I think that information and the media we consume should be decentralized and distributed by the people and held by the people. Why? Also for another reason, that if you centralize everything, like for example, now we lost kind of like the idea of a physical copy of someone or something, right? So you don't have VHS of DVDs, like all these stories and all these movies and all these series. They live on a server, and you can change them, right? You can change them because there is not a agreed upon copy of something that kind of is what the thing is. So who knows that these things they are not going to get edited and changed and adapted, and so you're going to lose the first intention that pushed someone to set out to tell a story, because it's going to be becoming something completely different eventually. And especially now, if you incorporate AI, that is going to make everything much easier and cheaper to alter. But I also personally think that AI is a great hope for filmmaking, and I'm going to explain why. Because I think I feel like the main obstacle to tell ideas was in the beginning, like I said, you had to buy film, right? And to shoot actual physical film. And it costed a lot of money. So to be able to make a movie, you had to have investors. And what that made? It made filmmaking something. It's probably, I want to say, the only art form where you actually need a shit ton of money to do something. Um, because you need to convince somebody that eventually they're going to make their money back. And to make their money back, you're going to have to respect certain canons or we took away the theatrical run, right, at a certain point. So to end up on Netflix, they needed to be sure that you were gonna get enough views or people was sticking through the end and all these kind of criteria, right? While with AI, you can actually create and tell stories on a much cheaper way. And for now, you can make like, 10-second clips or whatever it is, whatever heck it is. But you don't really need permission from anyone to do this shit because it's not expensive. It's not expensive, and you can express your ideas and try them out and put them out in a much free way. And then, of course, there are um, safeguard and get guardrails put in place by AI companies. But there are ways to go around that, either running your own local model or just being crafty and smart and sneaky about how you circumvent these issues. Um, and I have a very big hope in that because ultimately, what got me compelled to make media was the idea that I wanted to be able to express myself and not to have to compromise. And I feel like everything now became a huge compromise. Like only certain things go, so you need to compromise your ideas, or only certain things are gonna get put out, so you need to compromise your ideas. And this got progressively worse. And the more we get everything together, the worse the situation is gonna become. So let's see what happens. I'm curious. Let me know what you guys think. I'm curious to hear your ideas, and I'll talk to you the next time. Ciao.